Hey everybody, it's John Anthony Chihawk Soltero of Antihero Brand and AHB Kids. I am here today to review The Incredibles 2. You cannot review the second part without, taking a little bit of a look back at the first part. Um, 2017, I went out and I got a 4K TV. At the end of 2017, I got a 4K player. I've started collecting movies that I really, really like, things that are really cinematic, things that have, a great look to them in 4K. Um, yeah, I got Coco in 4K. I got Incredibles 2 in 4K. I went back and got The Incredibles in 4K. Um, Part 1 holds up. It's been 14 and a half years, but Part 1 holds up uh, as well, if not better than a lot of movies that maybe only, first part happened 5 years ago or 3 years ago. Um, Animation, story wise, character wise, it all holds up. That's the legacy. If Pixar does nothing else, that's the legacy of Pixar. Their storytelling is by far superior to, I would dare say, any other animation studio around, certainly any animation studio in America, and that includes Disney. Um, Warner Brothers, with the DC stuff that they're putting out, the DC stuff is phenomenal. Um, but I mean, DreamWorks, Sony Illumination, I mean, Pixar blows them all out of the water. And a movie that can stand the test of time, like a decade and a half later, definitely shows that. Now, the character development from the first movie really carries over because the second movie starts exactly where the first movie lets off, and it's great. There's so much comedy. There's pathos. It almost feels like there's not enough catharsis in the movie, but that kind of follows the ebb and flow of storytelling, where you introduce and you pull in and you have this like big thing happen, and then part two happens and you kind of have to have like that glum dark moment, that the challenge that the protagonist has. I mean, why would anybody want to continue to watch or read or follow along a story where the protagonist is just like everything's going good? If they're a hero, they're just mowing through bad guys. It gives them no challenge. It gives them no drive. It's kind of like it's a metaphor for us being people. Like, if we're not challenged on a routine basis, we don't become better. Um, and the challenge is how do you outdo this? From the voice acting to the character design to the the basic idea that in '04, and I mean for the preceding several years, they basically just stole the Fantastic Four and did it better than either Marvel or Fox or whoever was doing the Fantastic Four, and they made it work on so many levels. Being a literal student of animation and a metaphorical student of film, in that I watch a lot of movies and I follow stories and I can tell about character development, things like that. Um, there are certain things that you see and you hear and that you notice yourself and that you can kind of push away, um, that people kind of like some of the like more experts, like animation students, animation teachers, at least when I was at the Art Center Design College, going through school, and they were talking about um, how Miss Incredible's hair looked like doll hair because it wasn't sitting right, and it looked kind of patchy, and if you look close at a doll's hair you can see how it's rooted in, and I mean, all this like technology and ability was fairly new. I mean, yeah, in '01 they put out Monsters Inc. and Sully was completely covered in fur. Different texture, different look, also not a human being. So there's a lot of finer points to things, but the character development and the story itself were what kept me engaged and have had me watching these movies literally for years. I actually remember going to Zia Records here in Tucson in 2005, the night before, or technically the morning that I left to go to Wizard World Los Angeles 2005. That was my graduation present from my dad to me. He said, "You can go anywhere you want." I chose to go to a comic book convention because it's something I loved at the time and still devoutly love now, and got made fun of by a couple of people who I became friends with later when they were like, "You could have gone to like Hawaii, you could have gone to, you know, Canada, like he would have paid for you to do that, and you chose to go to Los Angeles where you could drive if you really wanted to, and you went to a comic book convention." The cool thing about that, though, is at that convention, I got to meet Bruce Timm. He drew me a Batman head in my sketchbook that I keep to this day. Um, I got to meet Stan Lee. That was really cool. I mean, not that meeting Bruce Timm was not cool. I bought some of my first bootleg DVDs and videos, like Batman Dead End, which I still have to this day because I mean, you can't sell that not legally or anything. Um, but okay, so I bought the DVD at like midnight when it came out, and I think I watched it. I think I passed out and woke up with like an hour to get to the airport. And this is post 9/11 where they're telling you get to the airport two and a half hours before your flight. But this is Tucson International Airport. You could show up 15 minutes before your flight and probably be fine. Right now with the government shutdown, maybe, I don't know. My sister just flew to Portland PDX, and she said that TSA did a really really good job, and those men and women are not being paid right now. So thank you for continuing to do your jobs. To the individuals, the men and women who are part of the Blue Flu. Um, I'm not casting judgment at all. You need to do what's best for you. You need to do what's best for your family. You need to, put food on the table. You need to pay rent, mortgage. You need to keep the lights on. Um, I'm not knocking anybody for any of the choices they make while this is going on. That's my political segue, and that's all I'm going to say. Back to The Incredibles 2. Like I said, it starts where the first movie ends. The action is interesting. The opening salvo, the opening scene is big. The dialogue between the characters and the interaction between the characters is great because they're very family oriented. And when I say that, I mean they talk to each other like family members. It's not this Family Ties, Cosby Show, like Family Matters, unrealistic depiction of how they talk to each other. And if this is taking place in the 60s, like they're telling each other what to do, they're telling each other to deal with it. Like it's great because it's a realistic depiction of a family that just so happens to have superpowers, and they get involved. I will be with you in a few minutes, Grayson. Stop, okay? It's okay. I'm reviewing. You got to do this, okay? Um, it's an interesting story because um, I don't know what they called it, but essentially it was a superhero registration act kind of thing in this universe, and they banned supers. Like you can't be a superhero doing anything. Um, you can't be in costume. You can't use your powers. You basically have to just blend in with the rest of society. And I mean, anybody who has those abilities, that would be like, I guess, telling LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or um, Michael Jordan, you can't play basketball anymore. You have to be just a regular person. That would be like, um, telling Seth Rollins or Rey Mysterio, you can't wrestle anymore. You've just got to be a normal person. You got to take the mask off, and you just got to go about your day, and you got to get a job. I don't know, selling insurance like Bob Parr did in the first movie. Um, the Incredibles get a mysterious benefactor who wants to see supers get brought back in a big way. And the concept behind the idea of how to bring supers back is actually pretty interesting because it's very now, but they tied it into the 60s, the 70s kind of retro feel. Um, the villains in the book or in the it might as well have been a book. It was that good. The villains in the story are great. I figured out who the villain was pretty early on in the movie. It seems to be something that you would be able to notice um, if you're paying attention. But it's not going to detract from the why this is happening. It's not going to take away from that experience. Um, Jack's evolution is really really interesting because like in the previews you see like, oh, he's got powers and everybody's like, oh my god, but at the end of the first movie he's got powers and he's like beating up um, Syndrome, and it's like, wait a minute, did they not know that he has powers? And then you think back and you're like, oh, well, the girl who was babysitting him was leaving all those messages talking about how like all this weird stuff is going on. I don't know what's happening. And, it's cutting in and out. And she's like, oh, everything's fine. Thanks for sending the babysitter. And they're like, wait, what do you mean babysitter? And then Syndrome kidnaps him. And everything that Jack is doing and all his power-ups and shape changing and stuff like that is stuff that's done way up in the sky and they can't see any of it. So that's what makes sense to me. And that's like one of the things that I gleaned from it after I watched it a second time. Um, but the comedy in it, there's a scene between Jack and a raccoon that's pretty freaking hilarious. Some of the other supers that show up uh, are pretty ridiculous in in like their personalities and what they do and stuff like that. But it's like if you took like your average people and then they just happen to have superpowers. This is what would have happened, especially in a Pixar PG type universe. Um, Character development, up, up, up. Story carry over from part one, really, really good. The animation, I don't even know how you do it. I mean, yeah, you've had 14 years to perfect it. Even better, but like Pixar's always been really good at what they do. Like the only movies that you could look back at and say, they're kind of aged and they don't look as well are like the early ones with like Bug's Life and maybe the first Toy Story and maybe the second Toy Story, but everything other than that has looked pretty phenomenal. I haven't seen Cars 2 or 3. I never saw, I don't know, was Planes one of their movies? I never saw that either because those were geared more towards little kids. Um, Incredibles 2. This is a long, long, long rant, and I apologize. If you liked Incredibles 1, you are going to like Incredibles 2. Um, it's incredible. Lot of fun, great character development. Uh, the storyline was very interesting, well done, but at the same time had little threads and plot holes that were very, very succinct and very, very well crafted. Um, it's a blockbuster. I really can't wait to see what they do for number three. I just really hope I'm not 54 years old when the next part comes out. I really hope they put this forward and they get another movie out relatively soon. Um, but that's my review for today. So go get yourself The Incredibles, and definitely go get yourself The Incredibles 2. My name is John Anthony Chihawk Soltero for Anti-Hero Brand Press and AHB Kids.